Shares in European arms makers surged on Monday. They were boosted by the prospect of higher spending in the region. At a summit in London on Sunday, 2 days after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky clashed with US President Donald Trump, European leaders agreed they must spend more on defence. Separately, Reuters reported that parties in talks to form Germany's new government are considering setting up a defence fund. Gains in defence stocks drove a broader gauge of aerospace and defence companies up more than 6% to a record high. The index has more than doubled since Russia invaded Ukraine 3 years ago. Janet Moy is from RBC Brewin Dolphin.
The increase in defence spending is one area that has some more visibility. At least I think there's a lot of commitment, and it is in fact essential, right? I think Europe has admittedly been underspending on defense for a while, and finally it is likely to ramp it up. And I think particularly investors are confident that the new German government would be able to borrow more, relax its fiscal rules, and also there's a likelihood to establish a defense fund.
JP Morgan analysts said the events of the last 2 weeks have turbocharged their thesis of a European rearmament cycle, with Europe seeking to gradually make more of its own military equipment and import less from the US. Shares in Europe's biggest defence company, BAE Systems, had risen around 15% in Monday morning trade. Germany's Hensoldt, which provides sensor systems for the Eurofighter, jumped around 30% to a record high.
U.S. President Donald Trump has paused military aid to Ukraine following his clash with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky last week. That's according to a White House official who, speaking on the condition of anonymity, said, quote, "President Trump has been clear that he is focused on peace. We need our partners to be committed to that goal as well. We are pausing and reviewing our aid to ensure that it is contributing to a solution." The White House had no immediate comment on the scope and amount of aid affected or how long the pause would last. The Pentagon could not provide further details. Zelensky's office did not immediately respond to a Reuters request for comment, nor did the Ukrainian embassy in Washington. The move deepens the rift that is opened between the two one-time allies. It comes after Trump upended U.S. policy on Ukraine and Russia upon taking office in January and taking a friendlier approach to Moscow, and after an explosive confrontation with Zelensky in the White House on Friday, in which Trump criticized him for being insufficiently grateful for Washington's backing in the war with Russia.
You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards, but without us, you don't have any cards.
Since Russia's invasion nearly 3 years ago, the U.S. Congress has approved $175 billion in total assistance for Ukraine, according to the nonpartisan Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. The announced pause in military aid applies mainly to aid that has been previously approved but not yet dispersed. Trump has not approved any new aid since his term began. However, he suggested on Monday that a deal to open up Ukraine's minerals to U.S. investment could still be on the table.
Mr. President, is the Ukraine minerals deal now dead, or can it be revived? What's your...
Well, I'll let you know. We're making a speech. You probably heard about it tomorrow night, so I'll let you know tomorrow night. But no, I don't think so.
The Trump administration views a minerals deal as America's way of earning back some of the aid given to Ukraine since Russia invaded 3 years ago. On Monday, Trump also described it as a great deal for us and suggested he'd give an update on the situation during a speech to a joint session of Congress set for Tuesday night.
A car ploughed into a crowd in German city Mannheim on Monday, killing at least 2. The deadly incident overshadowed carnival celebrations in the region, where police had been on alert for attacks. Police spokesperson Stefan Wilhelm said several people were seriously injured. Police have detained the driver and said
Congolese soldiers crowd into a chapel to stand trial for crimes including rape and murder allegedly committed as they fled a lightning rebel advance. Testimony during the court-martial proceedings have highlighted the dysfunction of an army hobbled by poor pay and corruption. The chaos of the past few weeks, as Congo loses ever more territory in the east to Rwanda-backed M23 fighters, has further strained the army's weak chain of command, exposing civilians to more risk of abuse, according to a confidential UN memo providing an update on the fighting. Military prosecutors pursued charges including theft, pillage, extortion and loss of war weapons at the trials in Muzienene last week, and in the South Kivu provincial capital Bukavu earlier in February. Most of the accused acknowledged that some soldiers committed such crimes, but denied they were involved, insisting they were separated from their units, like soldier Siko Mongombo Brice, accused of desertion.
We were trying to find our unit, and when we got to Kimbulu, we settled in the street. That's where we were apprehended. We explained that we were looking for our unit, and it was on our way back that we were arrested. That's the end of the story. We didn't steal. We didn't do anything wrong. We are innocent.
Testimony collected from quick-fire trials of more than 300 soldiers, interviews with 3 senior army officers, and a confidential UN memo seen by Reuters paint a grim picture. While President Felix Tshisekedi's government has touted efforts to recruit new soldiers and acquire new weapons, the senior officers said this has meant little for underpaid and under-equipped soldiers on the front lines. The trials have yielded death sentences for more than 260 soldiers. The Army's spokesperson for the Northern Front, Lieutenant Colonel Mak Hazuke, said the accused soldiers have, quote, dishonoured the Army and committed atrocities that could spur the population to aid the rebels' advance. The M23 rebels are backed by thousands of Rwandan troops, according to UN experts. Their superior weaponry and equipment creates a stark battlefield imbalance, officers said. Josephat Musamba is a Paris-based conflict researcher.
L'ennemi, appuyé par le Rwanda.
The enemy, supported by Rwanda, has burned the surveillance system and pinpointed their positions with precision. This has led to the loss of many commanders, among other consequences. That is the first issue. The second issue is a lack of trust within the units. This distrust can be explained by the fact that some commanders who were deployed sometimes hesitate or refuse to fight, believing they have been betrayed or sold out. The third issue is that they see which way the wind is blowing.
Rwanda denies providing arms and troops to M23. Tshisekedi has blamed military higher-ups for the poor performance, telling supporters the army had been betrayed from within. But his critics blame him for leaning heavily on regional forces and mercenaries, while incorporating militias who have proved difficult to control.
Prada is getting closer to a deal to acquire Versace from fashion group Capri Holdings. That's according to weekend reports by Bloomberg. It says a price of about $1.6 billion has been agreed. The report says Prada and Capri, which also owns labels like Jimmy Choo and Michael Kors, could now agree a deal in March. Talks are reportedly progressing after a due diligence process failed to show up any risks. Experts say owning Versace would allow Prada to target a whole new range of customers with tastes far
EV giant BYD said Tuesday it raised almost $5.6 billion in a share sale. That made it the biggest such listing in Hong Kong for 4 years. Now the Chinese firm plans to use the money to increase research and development spending and expand overseas. BYD has rapidly emerged as the country's biggest automaker, but over 90% of its 4 million sales last year were in its home market. There it accounted for more than a third of the total shipments of electric cars and plug-in hybrids. In February alone, it launched 21 new electrified vehicles in a bid to stay competitive at home. The firm is also ramping up hiring, with a goal to sell up to 6 million vehicles this year. That would put it roughly on par with General Motors. As part of the drive, it's ramping up export efforts, with Brazil currently its largest overseas market. Now the share sale reflects increasing optimism over the tech sector in China and Hong Kong. Sentiment has lifted following a high-level summit of top executives led by Chinese President Xi Jinping. Investors took that as a sign that the government planned to give more support to the tech sector. BYD shares were down over 6% by early afternoon Tuesday, broadly in line with the discount offered on the stock in the listing. Shares in major exporters were also under pressure following Donald Trump's confirmation that he was pressing ahead with new tariffs, including on Chinese goods.
Fresh trade wars kicked off Tuesday between the US and its top 3 trading partners, Canada, Mexico, and China, with new steep tariffs from Washington taking effect and triggering retaliation. On Monday night, US President Donald Trump accused all three targeted countries of failing to stop the flow of fentanyl into the US. Just after midnight on the US East Coast, Canadian and Mexican goods were hit with tariffs of 25%. And Trump's new tariffs on Chinese goods were doubled by an extra 10% to a cumulative 20%. Those new tariffs will apply to some major consumer electronics imported by the US, previously untouched by prior duties, including laptops, video game consoles, and Bluetooth devices. On Tuesday, China announced its own tariffs of 10 to 15%, mostly targeting US agriculture like soybeans, meats, and cotton, and added new export restrictions for designated US entities. Speaking to reporters Tuesday, a Chinese parliamentary spokesperson said China was willing to resolve US concerns through consultation and dialogue, but will not accept threats and oppression. Meanwhile, US tariffs on goods from Mexico and Canada will likely cause deeper repercussions for the highly integrated North American economy. Canada and Mexico have for decades enjoyed a virtually tariff-free trading relationship with the US. After Trump confirmed tariffs would proceed, financial markets reeled and global stocks tumbled. Both the Canadian dollar and Mexican peso fell against the US dollar. Automaker shares fell sharply, especially for major firms General Motors and Ford, who have production lines in Mexico. Speaking to Reuters, Chris Brigatti, Chief Investment Officer of Southwest Business Corporation, says consumers will bear the brunt of Trump's tariffs.
The tariff situation and its effect on the domestic U.S. economy are really a bigger concern now that we have a more aggressive stance coming out of Washington. And that being said, the stagflation issue is rearing its head. And stagflation is quite simply a stagnant or if not rising, a stable inflation rate, but a declining economic base. And I expect these specific tariffs to be damaging to the economy while increasing the prices of goods and services.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said on Monday Ottawa would hit back with 25% tariffs on up to about $107 billion worth of US goods. Mexico's economy ministry said President Claudia Sheinbaum is expected to announce her response Tuesday. On Tuesday, markets responded to the news with stocks falling and bond yields sliding across Asia and Japan's Nikkei closing down 1.2%. Trump's America First agenda, aimed at redrawing trade relationships in favor of the U.S., is expected to be a centerpiece of his Tuesday night address to a joint session of Congress.